first guest, Business South Africa CEO Cas Coovadia. Cas, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Not the kind of situation we would have ideally wanted to find ourselves in as a country, but one that was not completely unexpected.
Vuyo, good evening. Thanks for having me, and good evening to your listeners. Yeah, look, these are, they're frightening figures, they're depressing figures, but for a number of reasons, and it sounds a bit callous to actually say this, but for a number of reasons not unexpected. The one is obviously COVID, and COVID has had a significant impact on a number of sectors that we consider to be job-creating sectors like tourism, hospitality, accommodation, and lots of, we employ people around sports events, around arts and culture and so on, and all of that has actually taken a downturn as a result of COVID. But the reality is that even pre-COVID, our economy was in recession.
Exactly.
And so this is not surprising because our economy just isn't growing. And without a growing economy, you can't create jobs. So, we go back to the same old, arguments that it's not ideally businesses should be employing people. Businesses will employ people if they have the opportunity to grow. New businesses have the opportunity to actually open and develop without too much red tape. We have an environment for investment. And it's those same discussion that we've been having for the last 3 years that are on the table yet again, whenever the job figures come out. So, unfortunately, it's not rocket science. We don't have the luxury and the time to debate what sort of economic structure we want. We are in a globalized economy. We are less than 1% in GDP terms of global GDP. We have to grow our economy within the context of the rules of the global economy, and we need to manage that as best as we can to ensure inclusive growth and an inclusive economy. And those are the discussions we need to have.
Business, organized business, that is, organized labor, civil society, the government has been meeting regularly at NEDLEC, where you have this platform where you get to iron out and even get into the detail of some of these problems. Are you not finding one another?
Well, look, you're right. We're having lots of discussions. There's lots of meetings at NEDLEC. But I think that, we can't have these discussions, in our view, in situations which land up to be mass meetings, for want of a better term, where we land up with 20, 30, 40 people in a meeting from different stakeholders, and to try and discuss the difficult issues we need to discuss. What we're going to have to do across the board, if we're going to make an impact on joblessness, if we're going to make an impact on poverty and inequality, by growing our economy, there's going to have to be trade-offs and compromises across the board. And trade-offs and compromises don't get discussed in meetings of 20, 30, 40 people. What we need is 5, 6 people from labor, 5, 6 people from business, 5, 6 people from government, senior leadership, to actually sit down over a period of time, over a few days, and thresh this out and talk about what are the critical interventions needed in the economy, what low-hanging fruits can we actually leverage off now, what's the role of government in pulling the levers that only they can pull, and then on the back of all of that, how does business and labor reach some sort of a compact within the context of the sort of joblessness figures we have, within the context of the social problems we have. And the discussion has got to be, what do we need to do to encourage businesses to employ people? That's a discussion we need to have. Without violating the rights of workers, without going into the sorts of situation where we mistreat workers and pay them less than living wages. But the issue has got to be, what do we need to do to enable businesses to employ people?
Sounds very commonsensical an approach to me, and I'm sure to our viewers. But what's stopping that from happening? Have such proposals been tabled before? And if so, what have been the responses from the other social partners?
Well, we as BUSA, as one of the conveners of Business for South Africa, we presented a post-COVID economic recovery strategy to government in July last year. Since then, we've been having these discussions at NEDLAC. We haven't had, unfortunately, a bilateral with government on the economic recovery strategy we presented. I think that I think business and government also needs to sit down bilaterally, just as government and, for instance, COSATU sits down bilaterally to talk through issues. I think business and government need to sit down bilaterally. We need to look at what business is putting on the table. Government needs to critique that with us. And then they can have a bilateral with the neighbor as well. And then the three of us talk. I think that there are a number of problems in the country. We've got problems in the ruling party that has an impact on government. We have a cabinet that hasn't been aligned behind the president. The president needs to ensure that his cabinet is aligned behind decisions the president needs to make as president of this country, not the president of the ANC, as president of this country, as he did, for instance, when he took the decision and announced to increase the ceiling for embedded energy to 100 kilowatts. Those are the sorts of decisions we need. That's the sort of leadership we need from government. And I think behind that sort of leadership, we can all coalesce at different parts of society to actually make things happen and to actually make a difference. But the situation we are in currently does put a significant part of the onus on government. And I think government needs to show that sort of leadership. And we as business stand ready to actually join government in doing the hard work under that sort of leadership.
But the president has been promising since day one that what you're saying is actually the approach that he wants to follow. I mean, the cabinet we are talking about is a cabinet that he himself chose without the interference, of those that may have been there before, those who may have prevented or precluded him from, putting a signature to the kind of executive that he wants to have. An opportunity arose recently where he moved people around. So that's the person who should be showing the leadership that is required. Why are we still talking about or complaining about an executive that is, not doing, what it is supposed to do? Because it can only mean one thing, that he either hasn't given them the marching orders, or there are people within his executive that are prepared to defy him, or at the very least not cooperate with him, which should send more alarm bells.
Yeah, look, Vuyo, I think the root causes of that problem lies in the ruling party, because I think that because of the ideological, or not even the ideological battles, I think just the factional battles in the ruling party, that had an impact on the president's ability to actually play the role as president of South Africa. I think that too many decisions, there isn't a strong enough line between the party and the state. Too many decisions are taken in the party that actually impact on government, like deployment and so on. And I think that we need leadership in government now that says that national interests have got to be put high up on the agenda, and that's got to trump party interests. Now, it's easy for me to say, I'm not in the hot seat. But that's the sort of courageous leadership that is needed at the moment. That's the sort of crisis we are in at the moment. And I don't know what more needs to happen to actually impress upon all of us the very, very serious crisis our country is in across a broad range of fronts, not only the economic front, but across a broad range of fronts. And courageous leadership is needed from across the board, be it business, be it labor, be it government, be it community groups. But I think the leadership has got to come from government. So because it's government's role to actually ensure, one, that firstly its executive is behind the president, and then it's government's role to actually talk to the critical stakeholders and try to get them onto the same page as the government of this country. And you know, we hope that that happens. We urge that that happens, and we are prepared to put our shoulders to the wall in that sort of arrangement.
Well, we have a minister who is, or supposedly, responsible for employment in this country. In the 2 months plus that we've had this show, we've asked him to come on, even if it's just to, you know, take us through the thinking, even if things aren't or haven't been done yet. And he has refused to come on. Even today, after the release of these figures, short while ago, in fact, we checked whether there was even a statement from that department and ministry that will at least, you know, say or assure South Africans that the member of the executive responsible for employment in this country takes this issue very seriously. But we are told that that statement will come in another day or two. Now, we are here, and obviously we can't keep on, you know, whinging and moaning about these things, which then takes me back to, if you remember, at the height of state capture and all the shenanigans going on within the ruling party, there's a point at which, whether it was business organizations, civil society organizations, trade unions, churches, everyone then stood up and said, enough is enough. We can't keep watching or talking forever about these problems. It's time we did something about this. And indeed, things were done which have brought us where we are right now. Shouldn't we be tapping into those energies, you know, alliances, you know, that took us, that at least moved us from where we were to where we are now? Because we can't just keep complaining. There comes a time when we now all need to say, come on, guys, you're clearly not showing leadership here. So, you know, let's go for broke now.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely space for that. I mean, there are organizations like Protect Our Democracy, there are organizations like the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation and others that are doing good work in the sort of corruption space, in the governance space and so on. I think religious leaders have made their voices heard in those spaces. We actually cooperating very well, and we've developed some sort of a front to get the vaccine rollout sorted out and to actually encourage people to vaccinate. And perhaps we need to leverage of that sort of an alliance that's been built around the vaccines to also begin to make their voices heard on the socio-economy, if you like. And look, I think that, let me be clear, that we convinced that if President Ramaphosa leads us as president of the country, I think that a broad cross-section of society will actually be behind him. I think there is some level of faith in the president as president of this country, but at this point in time, I think it's his party that's actually dragging him down. And so, you know, I think that if we can come together as society, religious leaders, civil society, I think it's in all our interests. Even labor and business that very often have differences. On this, it's got to be in even labor's and business common interests to enable as many jobs to be created and to encourage businesses to actually employ people. And we need to do what we need to do to encourage business to employ people. It's no good saying, why isn't business employing people? If businesses could employ people to actually grow, to increase their businesses, be profitable, they do that. That's what businesses do. They're not doing it because we don't have the environment in this country for a whole range of reasons. We have regulatory uncertainty, and we need to actually sort those issues out so that businesses are encouraged to invest and to actually employ people and to grow this economy. And I think that that's something that should be in all of society's interest. And so, an alliance of that sort. And this is not speaking in a negative sense. A positive, constructive coming together of different interests in society to begin to push in one direction with one focus, and that is to increase investment, grow an inclusive economy, employ people, pay taxes, and have a government that utilizes those taxes in an honest, efficient manner to actually deliver services to people.
Cas Coovadia, thanks very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
He's the CEO of Business South Africa. Food for thought. There, should we elevate, in fact, why shouldn't we, the issue of economic recovery and the creation of jobs to the same position we took corruption and maladministration, lack of accountability not too long ago, which in the end saw President Jacob Zuma losing his seat.